For today's video, we have Chapter 1, Lesson 1, Solving Simple Equations. In this unit, one of the main standards we are going to be covering is MO.8.EEI.C.7b. And what you need to know is it means that I will be able to solve equations in one variable. Learning target. Write and solve one-step equations. The main success criteria we're going to focus on is I can apply properties of equality to produce equivalent equations, and I can solve equations using addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. Now, for us to go through and meet those criteria, there are 4 properties that you're going to need to know. The first is the addition property of equality. And you're going to need to copy down where it says adding the same number to each side of an equation produces an equivalent equation. Where it says algebra, it does say that if we have an equation where this is the equation where A is equal to B, I'm allowed to add the same number on each side without changing the meaning of the equation. It is still equivalent even though it looks like a brand new equation. Next, subtraction property of equality. Subtracting the same number from each side of an equation produces an equivalent equation. Every time we complete a step to solving an equation, it is creating a new yet equivalent equation. The numbers might look different, but no matter what, it's still representing the same situation, and the left and the right side are equal to each other. Now it does show it in symbols. Again, if we have this equation where A is equal to B, if you just subtract the same number on each side, it does not change the meaning of the equation. The left and the right still remain the same. We're going to look at 3 examples of this and see how we go about solving equations with these 2 properties. If there's anything you still need to write down, please pause the video and then press play as soon as you're ready. We have 3 examples. For the first example, it says solve x minus 7 equals negative 6. When we're at the part of solving an equation, we are really trying to undo something that is occurring to our variable. This says x minus 7, and we want to undo the minus 7. we have to use addition or subtraction. Whenever it is something being added or subtracted from the x, we're using addition or subtraction. We decide which one based off of what sign is in front of the number. It's a -7, and we use the opposite to undo. So the opposite would be to add 7 to both sides of the equal sign. -7 plus 7 leaves me with 0. So over on the left, it is just x. And on the right, I have -6 plus 7. So let's think about that. Say you owe your best friend $6. The next day, you show up with $7 and you're ready to pay them back. Once you give them that 6, you have left $1. That has given us a new equation that is equivalent to the original equation. B. Solve 1 equals W plus 6. It says W plus 6, so we have to undo the plus 6. We use the opposite, so instead of plus 6, we subtract 6 on the right and the left. Now on the right, this leaves me with W. If you have $1, but you owe your best friend $6, how much do you still owe them? You would still owe them 5. So -5 equals W is our new equation. Letter C. Solve y plus 3.4 equals 0.5. We still want to undo whatever is happening to y. It says y plus 3.4. So the opposite would be to subtract 3.4 on both sides of this equation. The y comes down. Positive 3.4 minus 3.4 is 0. And now I need to figure out what is 0.5 minus 3.4. Well, I'm taking a small number and subtracting a larger value, so I know it's negative. And what I could do is take the larger value and subtract the smaller value to help me find that difference. To do 4 minus 5, one method would be to take and borrow from the 3. The 3 becomes a 2, and I bring that over, so now instead of 4, it's 14. Fourteen minus 5 is 9. bring down my decimal, and 2 minus 0 is 2. So my result is negative 2.9. Take a moment if there's any part you did not understand or that you still need to copy down. You can pause the video. You can even go backwards and let it play again if you need to hear that extra part. We're going to next look at our third and fourth properties. We're going to pick up with the multiplication property of equality. In words, multiplying each side of an equation by the same number produces an equivalent equation. In math symbols, the way we've shown that is take the equation A equals B. It is okay to multiply both sides of that equation by another value, as long as it's the same value to both sides. You get an equivalent but new equation. The division property follows the same setup as the other properties. Dividing each side of an equation by the same number produces an equivalent equation. In symbols, we show the same thing. If I take A equals B as my example equation, I can divide both sides by C. There's only one small rule. You cannot divide by 0. In short, a lot of times when doing equations, we remind students that what you do to one side of an equation, you must do to the other. That way, both sides stay in balance with each other. We don't want one side being bigger or smaller than the other. We have 2 examples, and then I'm going to give you 2 questions to try on your own, and then you can come back and check for the solution. Pause if you're still copying, and then hit play when you're ready. Something to add from your previous year's understanding is what happens when we are multiplying our variable by a fraction. To start, it says solve negative 3 over 4 times n equals negative 2. I want to point out something. The negative 3/4 is called the coefficient. The number in front of or attached to a variable by multiplication or division is a coefficient. Now, they're being multiplied together. When we multiply, the opposite would be to divide. So say I divide each side by this fraction. We're going to erase something in a second, so hold on. When we divide by fractions, we have a small technique that we use where we don't actually divide. Instead, we multiply by what's called the reciprocal of the fraction. The reciprocal is where we flip it over, we swap the numerator and the denominator, and so that's what we're going to do. We're going to multiply each side by the reciprocal. Multiplying by the reciprocal, negative 3/4 times negative 4/3 leaves me with only a 1 in front of my n, which is okay, but we don't write the 1. And now all I need to do is negative 2 times negative 4/3. Many people, when they see a whole number times a fraction, they'll turn the whole number into a fraction, and then you just multiply straight across. So negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8. And then 1 times 3 is 3. So n is equal to 8/3. One more example, and then I'll provide you with 2 questions for you to try. B. Solve pi times x equals 3 times pi. Pi is just a number, and that number is being multiplied to x. So in order for us to solve the equation, we must then divide by pi. We use the fraction bar to show that division, which is a style choice. You don't always have to do that. But many people confuse the division sign with subtraction. Pi divided by pi is 1, but the 1 in front of the x, we don't keep that. 3 times 1 is 3. So x equals 3 is the solution. If you need to, pause the video to finish getting down the information, and then press play when you are ready for the 2 questions for you to try. The 2 questions for you to try are as follows. n divided by 5 equals 10. And negative 4 plus y equals 16. I'd like you to pause the video, try these two out, and then come back to see how you did. For our first example on the left, it says n divided by 5, so the opposite would be to multiply. So I'm going to multiply 5 on both sides. What this ends up being is you'll have 5n over n equals 10 times 5 is 50. What you could have done is, instead of showing this 5 on top and 5 on bottom, you could have shown that they reduced down to 1 n. But then again, we don't leave that n in front. So n equals 50. In our second example, it says negative 4 plus y. Now, whenever we have something being added or subtracted from our variable, we know we have to use addition or subtraction. The key is this symbol in front of that constant number. It says a negative 4. So the opposite would be to add 4 on each side. Leaving me with y is equal to